Usually when we think about aviation, or really just modern life in general, there's this underlying expectation of absolute precision. We like things clean.
Oh, absolutely. That illusion of control is incredibly comforting.
Right. You file a flight plan, you follow a set route, radar pings your exact location, and everything is mapped out on these neat, orderly grids. We've built an entire civilization around the idea that we are completely in control of our environment.
Yeah, we rely on a world that is visible and, above all, predictable. We assume that if something goes wrong, a fail-safe is going to catch us. A beacon will go off, a rescue team deploys, and the system corrects itself.
But then you step into the harrowing reality of survival specifically, surviving against the absolute indifferent extremes of nature. Suddenly all those clean lines, those grids, and those societal safety nets just vanish.
They're just gone.
Right, and we're looking at a landscape that is messy, brutal, and forces human beings to make choices that completely shatter the neat rules of civilized society. Welcome to another deep dive. Today, our mission is to explore a breathtaking, just deeply harrowing piece of source material detailing the events of Uruguayan Air Force Flight 571.
Also known as the Miracle of the Andes.
Exactly. And to really grasp what happened here, I want you, the listener, to strip away the idea that this is merely a story about an aircraft going down. It is an absolute masterclass in human resilience, improvised engineering, and the heavy psychological burdens people carry when forced to choose between societal taboos and survival.
It really is. It pushes the boundaries of what we think humans are physically and mentally capable of enduring.
Okay, let's unpack this. We have to start with the baseline context. It's October 12th, 1972. We've got a chartered flight carrying 45 people taking off from Uruguay, heading for Santiago, Chile.
And the manifest is mostly this team of tall, broad, young rugby players, along with some of their friends and family members.
Right, and it's supposed to be a quick trip.
Yeah, standard 3-hour flight under normal conditions. But, flying over the Andes is never truly standard. I mean, this is the longest continental mountain range in the world, with peaks second only to the Himalayas.
Wow.
Yeah. And on October 12th, a severe storm over the mountains forces the pilots to ground the plane midway in Mendoza, Argentina, just to wait it out overnight.
Which feels like nothing, right? Just a
Right.
minor inconvenience. A weather delay that you or I have experienced a dozen times at the airport.
Exactly.
But that single delay sets the stage for a catastrophic sequence of events the very next day. So we roll into October 13th. At 2:18 p.m., the weather has supposedly cleared up. They take off again, and for the first hour, it's smooth sailing.
Completely normal.
But by 3:21 p.m., they're nearing Santiago, and the pilots begin their descent. But they hit severe turbulence. Heavy clouds completely swallow the aircraft. Visibility drops to absolute zero.
Zero visibility.
Yeah. And then, suddenly, the ground collision alarms start blaring in the cockpit.
And the terrifying part here is the disconnect between the cabin and the cockpit. The passengers were mostly joking around, treating the turbulence like a roller coaster.
Because they had absolute faith in the machine.
Right. They couldn't see out the window, so they didn't realize that descending into the Andes while off course is basically a fatal error.
It's like driving down a highway at 500 miles an hour and suddenly your windshield is painted completely black.
Yeah.
You just have to trust the map. But in this case, the map was wrong. I'm trying to wrap my head around the physics of this moment, though. How does a plane just completely fall apart like this in midair?
Well, it comes down to sheer, terrifying momentum versus immovable granite. When the aircraft finally broke out of the cloud cover, the pilots realized they were heading straight for a massive, jagged rock face.
Oh, man.
They panicked, pulling the yoke back with maximum power to angle the nose up, desperately trying to gain altitude and clear the peak. But an airplane isn't a helicopter. It needs time and distance to climb.
Which they didn't have.
Exactly. They were simply too late. The nose cleared the ridge, but the rear of the aircraft clipped the mountain. That impact literally sheared the entire tail section off.
Just absolute carnage. 2 rows of seats at the back were violently sucked out into the void in a fraction of a second, taking 3 passengers with them.
And the main body of the plane, stripped of its tail and aerodynamics, continued upwards for a few agonizing seconds on pure forward momentum before dropping. That led to a second massive collision with a lower ridge that tore off the left wing.
Sending even more passengers falling into the mountains.
Yeah. What remained was just the front portion of the fuselage, essentially a hollowed-out aluminum tube. And it didn't just drop into the snow, it acted like a horrific, frictionless toboggan.
Right, sliding down a glacier at 350 kilometers per hour,
Yeah.
dropping 700 meters in elevation before finally crashing into a massive snowbank at an altitude of 3,570 meters.
And that sudden deceleration is what causes the most damage. The cockpit was completely crushed inward, killing both pilots instantly.
Miraculously, though, out of the 45 people on board, 33 survived that initial devastating impact.
It's truly unbelievable that anyone lived through that.
It is. And what really stands out to me here is the immediate emergence of leadership amidst total chaos. You have two young medical students, 19-year-old Roberto Canessa and 20-year-old Gustavo Zerbino. They don't freeze. They don't wait for an adult to tell them what to do. They immediately start triaging the wounded.
Right, checking on passengers like 23-year-old Fernando Parado, who was lying there in a deep coma with a severely fractured skull.
Yeah, but surviving the crash was genuinely just the first miracle. Because as the sun sets on that first day, the reality of their situation sets in. They are stranded in a whiteout environment 80 kilometers off their planned route, which leads right into their first major hurdle, the elements.
And we are talking about brutally cold conditions, temperatures plunging to negative 30 degrees Celsius at night.
Which is just, I can't even imagine.
And keep in mind, most of these passengers were young men from coastal temperate areas of Uruguay. Some of them had never even seen snow in their entire lives, let alone been trapped in it.
So how do they even survive that first night?
Improvised engineering. They used luggage, torn out seats, and the snow itself to build a makeshift wall, sealing the open, jagged rear of the fuselage to trap whatever ambient body heat they could inside.
Okay, but I have to stop you here and ask the question that I know you, listening to this, are probably screaming at your device right now. With all those planes searching for them, 11 different aircraft from Argentina, Chile, and Uruguay, why couldn't they be seen? It seems impossible that 11 planes could fly over the correct search area and miss a massive commercial aircraft.
What's fascinating here is the sheer effectiveness of accidental visual camouflage. It wasn't that the search planes were looking in the wrong place, it was that the aircraft was painted completely white.
Ah, right.
You have a white metal tube resting in a sea of white snow surrounded by white glaciers. From a few thousand feet up, it was practically invisible.
And it wasn't for lack of trying on the survivors' part. They tried making a massive cross in the snow out of suitcases. They tried writing SOS on the roof using lipstick they found in the luggage, but they literally ran out of lipstick before they could finish the first S.
Yeah, at one point they actually saw 3 planes fly directly over them. They were screaming, waving their hands, completely desperate, but the planes just kept flying.
Which forces a brutal psychological pivot. They realize rescue isn't coming, so they have to start innovating just to endure. And the specific survival hacks from the source material are just mind-blowing. Like, take Fido Strauch. He uses a thin metal sheet from the back of an airplane seat as a solar collector.
Right, because eating snow directly actually lowers your core temperature and causes hypothermia.
Exactly. So Fido angles this metal sheet perfectly to catch the intense UV rays, puts snow on it, and it melts rapidly, trickling down into empty wine bottles.
Pure survival hacking.
And it doesn't stop there. They couldn't walk on the glacier without sinking waist deep, so they ripped the seat cushions out and wired them to their boots to use as makeshift snowshoes.
And they ripped the wool linings out of the seat covers to wrap themselves against the cold.
Yes. Oh, and the sunglasses. They only had 3 pairs of sunglasses to share among 30-plus people to prevent snow blindness. The UV rays reflecting off the snow up there will literally sunburn your retinas, so they had to strictly ration eye protection.
While all this physical survival is happening, there is a desperate attempt to reconnect with the outside world. Roy Harley, an electronics enthusiast, managed to salvage a standard transistor radio from the wreckage. He stripped wires, built a massive improvised antenna, and actually got the thing to work.
But it was a receiver only. They could hear the world, but the world couldn't hear them.
Right, and that radio ends up delivering the most devastating news imaginable. It's day 11. After 142 hours of searching, they hear a crackling broadcast. The search operation has been officially called off. The world has given them up for dead.
The contrasting reactions to this news are just heartbreaking. While most cried or turned to prayer, surrendering to despair, Fernando Parado, who had woken from his coma only to lose his mother and sister to their injuries, he didn't react with tears.
He simply started planning.
But planning requires energy, which brings them to the most harrowing part of the source material, the depletion of rations. Initially, they had only 8 chocolate bars, a tin of mussels, 3 small jams, almonds, peanuts, dates, candies, plums, and some wine.
That is a caloric deficit the human body simply cannot sustain.
To give you an idea of how extreme this rationing was, Fernando Parrado ate a single chocolate-covered peanut over the course of 3 entire days.
Just one peanut.
It's like trying to fuel a heavy-duty truck with a single eyedropper of gas. It's a testament to immense willpower, but biologically unsustainable.
And by day 11, the food was entirely gone. They tried eating cotton and leather from the seats, which only gave them agonizing stomach cramps. And at 3,800 meters, there is zero vegetation or wildlife.
Nothing at all.
This raises an important question, about what happens when the absolute biological imperative to stay alive completely collides with the deepest moral taboos of human civilization.
Yeah.
It forces an unthinkable proposition. Roberto Canessa, the young medical student, finally voiced the grim reality. To survive, their bodies needed protein, and they had only one source of protein left. They must consume the bodies of the dead.
I really want you to think about the paralyzing psychological weight of this.
Right.
These weren't strangers on a battlefield. These were their friends, their classmates, their family members. While some initially refused, arguing they would rather die, 2 days of excruciating starvation forced everyone to cross that unimaginable line.
And making that horrific choice solved their immediate starvation, but nature wasn't done with them yet. Just as they established this grim new baseline for survival, the mountain strikes back.
Yeah, the avalanches.
Right. It's the night of October 29th, day 16. A massive avalanche sweeps down and violently buries the fuselage, suffocating 8 more people.
Down to 19 survivors.
And they are trapped in a cramped, snow-filled, pitch-black space. But Parrado, showing that relentless planning mindset, uses a metal pole to aggressively poke a ventilation hole through the roof so they don't asphyxiate.
They dig out after 2 agonizing days, only to be forced right back in by a blinding blizzard for 3 more days.
But emerging from that snow cave marks a massive shift in their psychology. When they finally see the clear sky, they realize absolutely no one is coming. Sitting and waiting equals death.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because they transition to action. They hold a meeting and choose the strongest among them, Canessa, Parrado, and Vizintin. They dedicate the warmest clothes, the best makeshift sleeping spots, and the largest share of the food to these 3. They're preparing them for an expedition.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, their first major expedition on November 15th, day 33, actually took them east, which was completely the wrong direction. They wrongly believed they were near Curacao, Chile, but they found the plane's severed tail section.
And inside, it's a treasure trove. Chocolates, meat patties, rum, comics, medicine, and the plane's heavy 2-way radio.
Right, the radio.
Oh man, this part is agonizing. They find these heavy 24-kilogram batteries in the tail. They drag Roy Harley all the way out there to help hook it up, thinking they can finally call for rescue.
Yeah.
But there is a fatal mismatch.
Yeah, the batteries were 24-volt direct current, or DC. But the aircraft's internal radio system requires 115-volt alternating current, or AC.
It's like having a dead smartphone and a massive car battery, but absolutely no cables or adapter to connect them. Direct current is a flat stream of power, but the radio needs an alternating, pulsing wave to function. Without an inverter, those batteries were just useless blocks of lead.
Technology completely failed them in that moment. It became clear that only pure physical endurance was left.
And after a second avalanche on day 59 kills 3 more people, leaving just 16 survivors, they realize they must walk west, over the massive peaks. But to survive the negative 30-degree nights on the open trek, they need a final piece of improvised genius.
Enter 18-year-old Carlos Miguel Rodriguez. He remembered his mother's sewing lessons. He takes his small kit, and he painstakingly stitches together the aircraft's thermal insulation into a large 3-person sleeping bag.
Which is incredible.
That single item changed the math of their survival. It allowed them to retain combined body heat and survive the nights on the glacier.
So on December 12th, the ascent begins. And the brutal physical reality of this climb, as described in the sources, is staggering. No gear, no map, no compass, thin air. Parrado is wearing 3 pairs of jeans, 3 sweaters, 4 pairs of socks, and plastic shopping bags over his feet to keep the moisture out.
And because the snow was so deep and steep, for every step they took upward, they were slipping back half a step.
An exhausting grind. But on day 4 of the climb, they reach the peak.
And this is the crushing view. Instead of the green valleys of Chile they expected, Parrado and Canessa look out and see 360 degrees of snow-covered mountains stretching to the horizon.
Just endless white. But here, they make a strategic pivot. Realizing the journey is going to take way longer than the 2 or 3 days they planned for, they send Vizintin back to the crash site so Parado and Canessa can take his food rations.
And the contrast is striking. Vizintin uses a plane seat as a sleigh and slides all the way down to the fuselage in 1 hour, a distance that took 3 agonizing days to climb.
Leaving Parado and Canessa alone for the final push. They hike for days toward 2 snowless peaks in the west, and after 9 days of hiking, they reach a river valley, and they see cows.
Which means civilization. And then, on December 20th, they spot 3 men on horseback across a roaring river.
The noise of the river is too loud to shout over. But the farmer, Sergio Catalan, returns the next day, throwing a piece of paper and a pencil across the river tied to a stone. And Parado writes the legendary note. "I come from a plane that fell in the mountains. We've been walking for 10 days. Please come and save us."
Sergio reads it, throws them some bread, and rides for 10 straight hours through rough terrain to alert the army.
The climax is just breathtaking. On December 22nd, day 70, helicopters arrive. Parado actually guides them using a flight chart, flying dangerously close to the cliffs to find the site. 16 survivors are rescued. Parado and Canessa had hiked 61 kilometers in 10 days. Canessa weighed only 44 kilograms when rescued, having lost half his body weight.
An almost incomprehensible feat of human endurance.
So what does this all mean? We're looking at 72 total days stranded in the frozen Andes, from the violent physics of the crash and the ingenuity of survival to the heartbreaking sacrifices and that final 61-kilometer trek of sheer human will.
Distilling the core lesson from the source material, it's a profound testament to patience, humanity, and the idea that when pushed to the absolute brink, human beings are capable of achieving the impossible.
Yeah. And I want to leave you with a final thought, not explicitly covered in the survival timeline, but building on it. Think about what happens on day 73. When you are thrust back into normal society after enduring 72 days where all societal rules were stripped away just to stay alive. How do you ever look at a normal, everyday inconvenience the same way again? Does surviving the impossible make the ordinary world feel like a gift or completely alien?
That's a profound thing to think about.
It really is. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning, keep exploring, and we'll see you next time.